It was nearly 2 years ago that I got approached by an agency working with DeWalt for making some videos for DeWalt. And at the time, sales of plans had been slowing down already, and that's my main source of income, and I'd been wondering, what's the next thing? So I quoted them a price for 2 videos, and it took an awful lot of back and forth. And then finally, by late 2016, they sent me some tools. These are the tools: angle grinder, reciprocating saw, drill, impact driver, circular saw, plus a table saw that I don't have in my shop right now. So I ended up making 2 videos with a table saw because I thought that was pretty neat that a table saw can actually run on batteries. But before I put these videos out, I actually ended up rather prominently using this drill when I was finishing up this bandsaw, just drilling some holes in the frame. And I got some rather negative feedback in the comments about that, so I'm like, ooh, not good. But I put out the 2 videos with a table saw without running them past DeWalt first because I was short of videos. It was around Christmas time, always a busy time. So just put them out there, have something, and then deal with them later, which turned out to be a mistake on my part. And when I released that first video with the DeWalt table saw, I made it very clear that this was sponsored content. And what happened is I saw an immediate drop in sales of plans, like the very day I released that video. And I kind of dreaded releasing the second video, and that one again caused a further drop in sales, quite substantial. So, what had happened here? What I realized is a lot of my sales were actually goodwill, sort of like people use Patreon. People were buying my plans just to support me, and seeing all this DeWalt stuff, they figured, oh, he's on DeWalt's payroll now. He doesn't need my help. Of course, the price I quoted DeWalt was way too low to make up for all the hassle it was to deal with them. And I didn't even go through all the hassle because I didn't wait for them to approve the videos. Again, I quoted it way too low. And with all that huge drop in sales, I lost way more in sales than the price I quoted them, and I still hadn't been paid. And so I emailed them. It's like, hey, what's happening? When do I get paid? And they told me, well, you didn't go through the proper process of getting your videos approved. So that's kind of a violation of the terms. Fair enough, it was. Eventually, we settled on half the amount I had quoted for them. So I didn't get a whole lot of money from DeWalt for my trouble. It's certainly not enough to cover the hassle that it was. And I lost way more than that in sales. Of course, I did have a bunch of, quote, free, unquote, tools. But these tools ended up costing me way more than it would have cost to just buy them new. So after that, I figured I really need to counter this impression that I'm on DeWalt's payroll. And I have since then very much avoided using DeWalt tools if I can. I have used them occasionally, but I try not to show them. I used actually their table saw in a couple of videos, and I always framed it in such a way that you couldn't really see the yellow of the table saw. In fact, one time I was using this reciprocating saw, or I was about to use it in a video about my bandsaw on a dolly sawmill, and then I realized, wait, no, can't show DeWalt. So I grabbed this reciprocating saw and made the cut instead, and mind you, that works just fine. I have actually since then been using some of these tools a fair bit. The tools I actually use the most is this, which I just used a lot for pruning, and just I'm quite likely to need a reciprocating saw when I'm away from the workshop. These lights I end up using quite a lot because they're great lights for just adding a little bit of extra light when filming, especially if I'm filming outside the shop. The drill I have used almost never. It's just too big and heavy for almost everything I do. And I've gotten away from impact drivers, so I don't know if I've ever actually driven a screw with this one. The circular saw works fine, but usually if I use a circular saw, there's a fair bit of setup involved. And I've never used one away from an outlet, so never really used that one. The angle grinder can be quite handy. It happens from time to time that I need to cut off something, some bolt or something that's away from the shop or any outlet. So that's a very handy tool. And I ended up using that reciprocating saw for pruning quite a lot, but it's not really a substitute for a chainsaw. but just that I don't need a cord and I don't have to worry about starting a gas chainsaw. It's like, you know what? A electric chainsaw that's battery powered would actually be a pretty cool idea. I know it's not very manly, but it could be very useful. And in fact, Paul at Canadian Woodworks had sent one of the DeWalt chainsaws for free because he does lots of product placements. And I thought, you know, if I talk nice to DeWalt, maybe they'll send me one. And then I thought about it some more, and it's like, these tools cost me way more than it would have cost to buy them new. So the most economical thing to do is to just spend my own money on the damn chainsaw. And that's what I did. This is the one I bought. It cost me $300. It works awesome, but man, there's some frustrating things about it. It comes with an incredibly beefy battery. This is actually 1.5 times the size of even these batteries. That's 9 amp hours if it's running at 20 volts compared to a 6 amp hour battery. I've used it a fair bit. It's very handy. The battery lasts long enough that quite often I run out of chain oil before the battery's dead, which is a bit of a problem. And I have to say, I've had frustrations with this chainsaw to the extent that I just grabbed it and threw it as far as I could, because it's got a problem with the chain is very likely to come off of this saw. I think maybe I should make a video about this saw. Especially having paid my own money for it, I can say whatever the hell I want to about it. But yeah, sponsorships, that really didn't work out well for me. And given the experience and how much it cost me, as in it did not enrich me at all, it made me poorer. I would have been financially far better off just buying those DeWalt tools and not ever taking any money from DeWalt. But lesson learned. And I haven't really done anything sponsored since then. Not to say that I will never do anything sponsored, but my philosophy has been since then, it's like, if I'm going to look like a sellout, it damn better pay like I'm a sellout. So the price I've been quoting when I'm approached is accordingly, and it's always been a little bit too rich for the manufacturers because they know somebody else will do it for less.